Blue Sky Studios was one of the best production companies ever, with their majority of films being huge successes. It's too bad that it got shut down a year ago due to COVID restrictions, which is really unfortunate because this didn't apply to every other animation company. But Blue Sky Studios had a lineup of great adaptations, such as Ice Age, Rio, Robots, and the topic of today's video, the Peanuts movie. Before I dive into this movie, I feel as if a history lesson is needed. The Peanuts first started off as a comic strip created by Charles M. Schulz from 1950 to 2000, before his passing away, appearing in 2,600 newspapers with a readership of around 355 million in 75 countries. However, despite its popularity, they couldn't be more memorable than with their TV specials as well, such as A Charlie Brown Christmas and It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown, which were massive hits amongst audiences, myself included. That's where I come in. I'm a huge fan of the Peanuts. I read their comics and watch their specials all the time as a kid. And the franchise had a basic plot to it, with the main character Charlie Brown being a nobody and constantly getting ridiculed by his peers. It may come off as mean-spirited to some, but it works well in context of the specials. To this day, the Peanuts is still talked about by fans of it, so when you have a franchise that's very successful and popular, what's the next logical step in continuation? Well... 2015 gave us the Peanuts movie, and it received very well in ratings and did amazing in the box office, receiving a worldwide total of $250 million. I was actually excited when this movie was announced, and upon watching the trailer for it, it looked near identical to the classic 2D animated Peanuts cartoon that we've gotten to know for years. But why did they do that exactly? The idea for a Peanuts movie was actually 9 years in the making, starting in 2006. A while after Charles Schulz's death, his son, Craig Schulz, came up with the idea for a Peanuts film. When presenting their film to studios, Craig stipulated that the film would remain under Charles's control. On October 9th, 2012, it was announced that 20th Century Fox and Blue Sky Studios were developing a 3D animated computer feature film based on the strip, with Steve Martino directing from the screenplay by Craig. The crew wanted the movie to replicate exactly what made the original Peanuts specials and strips so memorable. The film was originally scheduled for Thanksgiving on November 25th, 2015, but then they decided to release it 19 days earlier. I got to see this movie on the 20th because at the time I was only 11 years old and I didn't care about spoilers, but when I got to see it in the cinemas and after I walked out of the theaters, did I enjoy it? Yes, the fuck I did. I was very impressed that a simple concept coming from the Peanuts can be put into the cinematic universe, and it's really brought out by how it's presented. When a new girl moves into Charlie Brown's neighborhood, Charlie Brown himself becomes in love with her, but is having trouble trying to impress her. But after noticing how good traits she possesses, he decides to embark upon a series of new activities in hopes of finding one that will get the little red-haired girl to notice him. Meanwhile, Snoopy and Woodstock write a novel that also involves a love story between Snoopy and this other dog named Fifi. Which, to be honest, it isn't as interesting as the Charlie Brown stuff, but I still enjoyed it. Especially when you think this film is gonna go nowhere due to all the little character clips showing up every now and then, but they're all tied into what the story is actually about. Throughout the entire movie, our main character is trying to prove to everyone that he can be good at something, but his friends, especially Lucy, have little to no faith in him. And while I can admit that this trope of everyone shitting on him in almost every special can be a bit exaggerated, this movie does a good job in making all the kids likable, even Lucy at times. And that's the thing with this movie, it's so full of life and positivity where it feels like everyone's happy. And I know it's fine to do a movie that doesn't involve sunshine and rainbows, and I'm not saying that this movie is, but there was not a single moment that caught me off guard or even pissed me off. It's so lifelike and charming, and most of it comes from the relationships between each character. Charlie Brown's relationship with Snoopy works because the latter is almost always by his side and tries to help him out no matter what. And that's basically the gist of seeing these two on screen together. It's so adorable. Snoopy's relationship with Fifi is charming as well, and it leads to some heartwarming and funny scenes between the two. But I believe the best part of the entire movie was when Charlie Brown realizes that he got the highest test score in the class, and everyone was thrilled for him, except for Lucy, who was skeptical about the whole thing being a coincidence. But when Charlie Brown goes up to receive his award and is handed his test, it reveals that it wasn't his, it was Peppermint Patty's. But this movie did something that the others couldn't do when it comes to this, and that's making Charlie Brown come clean at the moment he realizes something was wrong. And it's not like he intended to steal Peppermint Patty's and claim it his own. He was understandably in a rush. See, the problem with most movies that do this sort of thing is that the character in question realizes that they're nobodies, but when they suddenly decide to lie by saying that they're good at something, they wait until the very end of the movie to do the lie and reveal trope, and these characters come off as extremely pretentious. An example would have to be Shark Tale, where Lenny's brother dies from trying to eat Oscar, but after this, Oscar suddenly takes credit for it and becomes this pretentious douchebag until the end. It barely works here because Oscar is very unlikable, while Charlie Brown is too good of a person to do what Oscar did. Plus, this movie didn't have everyone hating Charlie Brown after revealing the truth. If anything, they actually admire his honesty and respected him as a human being. At least towards the end, but it works either way. Speaking of working well, they did a wonderful job with the animation, as it's meant to replicate what the original was supposed to look like, despite the fact that it's a CG, but it still looks massively impressive, with the majority of it being 2D and taking things from the specials, such as making everything still instead of having them to move. It may seem odd in an occasional 3D movie, but it works well with the Peanuts movie. The voice acting is really good too. They knocked it out of the park with how well the kids are supposed to sound like, especially Noah Schnapp, who went on to play Will in Stranger Things a year later. In the end, the Peanuts movie was good back then, and it is good now. It was definitely the best thing I've seen in 2015, next to Sponge Out of Water and Inside Out, and those movies couldn't compare to this movie because just look at it! I'm so happy it never got around to making a sequel, then it would have ruined the charm this movie had. I mean, the first real movie was good with perfectly written characters and decent storylines, but then they had to fuck it up with a sequel that went against all that, featuring guest stars like Bruno Mars. That doesn't say all sequels are bad. In fact, Lego Movie 2 is way better than the first. But I'm just saying that when a movie is great, it's too good to even warrant a sequel. And that's the case with the Peanuts movie. Alright, I've taken care of this film. What's next? Oh. That's right.